So the National Visa Center backlog is still quite large. Over 374,000 cases are sitting there waiting for an interview to be scheduled. If you're waiting for your visa interview to be scheduled, let's talk about what's happening at National Visa Center in March of 2024. Hello everybody and welcome back to Immigration Channel. This is where we explain complex immigration matters in short, simple videos. We make immigration easy. And in this video, we'll talk about what's happening at the National Visa Center. There's so many cases pending there, over 374,000. And we want to know which cases are now being scheduled for an interview and what's going to happen in the next few months while they're trying to figure out which embassies are open, which embassies are opening slots for interviews. And we'll talk about the actual backlog report at National Visa Center, but also try to give you some predictions as to what you can do while your case is sitting at National Visa Center waiting to be scheduled for an interview. As always, make sure you watch this video all the way until the end because I'm going to cover quite a few topics. But before we do that, if you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos, and also give us a big like so YouTube will be able to show this video to more people just like you. As always, if you need help with your immigration matters, all you have to do is send me a text to 619-483-4549 or go to www.immigrationasap.com, leave your information there, and one of our team members will contact you ASAP. And now let's jump into the video and talk about the current backlog at the National Visa Center. So before we talk about the actual backlog at National Visa Center, let's look at their report. Every month, the National Visa Center publishes a report. You can see the report somewhere on the screen right here, and we can talk about what's happening there so you can understand where you stand in the process. Because as you can see, the backlog is still quite large. Yes, it's definitely been reduced from the past few months. Yes, it's definitely better than 2023 or even 2022, but it's still large enough to the point where people have to wait for their interviews a year or even sometimes 2 years if you are from a very backlog consulate or embassy like Islamabad or Mumbai. So let's look at that chart for a second. So as you can see, the number of people that are currently documented complete and are waiting for an interview is 374,000. Is 374,532. This is current as of March 2024. These applicants are currently documented complete and they are waiting to be scheduled for an interview. Now, the next number we're talking about is the number of documented complete applicants that were actually scheduled for interviews in March, and that number is 48,117. Now, again, it's definitely larger than the previous month, but again, the movement is very, very slow, less than 2% movement than the previous month. And finally, the number of applicants eligible for visa interview still waiting is 326,415. That means that those people are still waiting to be scheduled for a visa interview, and those embassies are not opening any interview slots yet. So let's talk about the National Visa Center NVC backlog. What is it? Well, remember that every time that the USCIS approves an I-130 petition, that petition is now being sent to the National Visa Center pending further processing and eventually scheduling for an interview. Now, every time an I-130 is being approved, that increases the backlog every single time because while those cases are being approved, the National Visa Center is not able to release enough cases in the speed that the USCIS is approving those cases. So remember, that's why we have a backlog, because more and more cases are being approved on the USCIS side, but not enough cases are being released on the National Visa Center side every single month. And therefore, every single month, you see this backlog continues to increase. Now remember, the only way that National Visa Center is able to release cases is when two things must happen. First, the case must be documentary complete. And for this to happen, all the documents that you are sending to National Visa Center, the one that you're uploading in your online account, must be correct and complete and to the satisfaction of the National Visa Center. If your documents are not enough, if the copies are not good enough, if you're sending them the wrong documents, if your financial documents are lacking, your case is not going to be deemed documented complete. Only once you send them everything, your case will be considered documented complete. Therefore, in our office, we're trying to submit everything on time. As soon as they open the account, we submit everything online and everything is there from day one. So then we are speeding up the process of them qualifying our clients. Now, the second thing that must happen is that not only you have to be documented complete, but also your priority date must be current. So for example, if you're married to a US citizen, it's always current. Obviously, there's no wait time. If your parents are US citizen, there's no wait time. But we have a lot of other categories. We have F2A, spouses of green card holders and children under 21. We've got F2B category. We've got F4 category of siblings. All these people are waiting for their priority date to become current. And once it becomes current, it is essential to communicate with the National Visa Center so they'll be able to communicate with the embassies to request them to open interview slots. Now, another thing that can happen is that the embassies obviously are very backlogged as well, and they're not opening enough interviews, and therefore it's kind of like a back and forth. So National Visa Center is now almost like a holding facility. They are holding all these cases and they're waiting for these open interview slots every single month. The consulates and embassies worldwide are working with the State Department to try to ease this backlog. Again, what they're doing, they're bringing more consular officers, they're opening more locations for interviews, and they're also waiving a lot of interviews to make sure that we're going to see kind of reduction in backlog. And it's been working slightly, but it's still not enough. And therefore, every month we're on the backlog and we're trying to give you updates and see how things are moving. Remember, we've also received the April Visa Bulletin, and it wasn't such great news. Again, we've seen definitely movements. We've seen movement in some categories, but it wasn't the best news we expected. It wasn't the best news that we expected to see in terms of predictions, because that Visa Bulletin gave us a glimpse as to what we're going to be expecting, and we didn't see in those predictions a very big movement. The biggest movement we've seen is maybe 6 months forward in some of these categories, maybe a year, but not more than that, which tells you that the backlog will continue to stay more or less like that. Maybe you'll see a dent of maybe like 2 to 4% decrease in the backlog, but it's not going to be like the 30 or 40% that many of you expected, as well as myself, to see this year. Because again, we're going to see small increments in reduction of backlog, but it's not going to be massive. And therefore, you're going to have to resort to other ways to try to push your case forward. So what can you do in the meantime to minimize the wait time on your green card? Number one, if you do eventually get an interview, please avoid rescheduling it, because every time you reschedule an interview, it's not clear whether somebody else will get a slot. And sometimes these interview slots literally get lost. So at all costs, please try to avoid rescheduling your interview. Number two, make sure you register your appointment online. Once you get assigned an interview date by the NVC, make sure you register it with the online system. This way, the embassy has your contact information and they'll be able to contact you in case they need to move your date or in case they have any other questions for you. This is going to prevent you from being delayed and also making sure that everything is going to be okay at the time of your interview. Also, registering is very important because at the end of the day, when you receive your passport, it will come to the right place. Number three, make sure to attend your medical exam as soon as possible. Once NVC schedules your interview, you need to schedule the medical appointment. You can't do it too early. You can only do it once the interview is scheduled. If you're still waiting for your visa interview, see if you qualify to use the expedite process through National Visa Center. Many of you used it and it didn't work, but you have to make sure you use it for the right reasons and use it properly. There's only one way to do it, by contacting the National Visa Center email and having the proper reasons for the expedite. Expedites do work and you need to utilize it properly. Finally, if you are going to an interview and you also need an immigrant waiver, like a 601, make sure not to attend your appointment until your waiver is approved, okay? Because if you don't and you don't have the waiver approved, your case will be denied and then you will lose this appointment. Okay, remember, you have to be diligent about your case. If your case is severely delayed, you can't do more. We can sue the government, we can sue the State Department, we can sue the individual embassies, when the time is right. And therefore, it is important for you to be in touch with your attorney. And if you don't have an attorney, you're welcome to contact our team at 619-483-4549 to assess whether your case is ripe for a lawsuit. At the end of the day, the backlog is here, and every month I will keep updating you about the status of the backlog and things you can do to try to minimize it. But it's there, and it's going to stay here for a while, at least through 2024, unless some kind of miracle will happen. Once again, if you need help with your immigration matters, please send me a text or go to www.immigrationasap.com. As always, your comments are welcome. Let me know what other topics you would like me to make more videos about, and specifically your concerns about the backlog. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.